All right, episode number 40. Yes, 40 of Red versus Blue. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
Let's start off with the polls and where everything stands from a polling point of view. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the economic policies of both candidates.
Well, Mike, we're sort of back into the trench warfare situation that Biden and Trump found themselves in before the original June debate. Harris got a small bounce after the debate with Trump, but then polls began to sort of retrench a little bit on her in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Trump moved back into the lead. A poll released this morning had Pennsylvania and Wisconsin tied. Those are signs that a campaign consultant would look at and ask the question, has she peaked? Did she peak too early? Now, we don't know that until we see more either confirming or contradictory polls going forward. But her momentum had been stalled now for 2 weeks, 10 days. So she was facing an issue of what should we do? Looking at the poll, she was 9 to 11% back on the question of handling the economy and tax policy. Voters are simply tired of Bidenomics. They don't want traditional tax and spend Democratic policies. She needed to create some distance and create some specifics. She was getting pounded in the press, actually, because of her lack of specifics on her economic policy. They made a decision, I think it was a wise decision, to highlight her economic policies in a speech at the Pittsburgh Economic Club, recognizing that she needed to move out of this little stasis that they're in and give people comfort on her economic policies. And she began, I think, very strongly. She said she's a capitalist. She said that she's going to seek solutions not tied to ideology. She's going to seek public-private partnerships and new business tax credits. She led with middle-class tax cuts. Now, this is a speech that could have been given by any Republican nominee over the past 50 years. And I'm beginning to think, okay, maybe she's getting it. Maybe she's going to pivot on economics. She did not mention Joe Biden a single time. She did not use the terms pay their fair share. And she did not mention the increase on corporate taxes or the tax on unrealized capital gains, which had previously been rolled out with not a particular amount of success previously. So that was her speech in Pittsburgh. And I would give her, by the way, a B on concept and understanding the assignment of what to do. However, I would give her a C- on substance in terms of what she had to say.
Right.
Here is the dilemma that Harris and her campaign find herself in. The Trump tax cut reduced taxes on everybody's income, on incomes between $15,000 and $50,000 by between 16 and 26%. In my particular case, I have my accountant calculate this. The Trump tax cut saved me $5,847 in 2019, even though I lost $47,000 in deductions and exemptions. So people all over America did that same calculation. They came up with a different number, but they understand what they got out of the Trump tax cut. And her repeatedly saying that, it was only for millionaires is not consistent with the understanding and the experience of every other taxpayer throughout the country. That's why she wasn't getting any traction on the economic policy up till now. Now, here's her dilemma. She says she's going to lower the taxes on 100 million middle-class Americans. Now, the Trump tax cuts expire in 2025, and taxes will go back up to the old rate. So I will lose that benefit that I have, as will every other taxpayer in the country. And I went through her 80-page plan that she posted online, and she is not specific. When she says, I'm going to cut your taxes, does she mean she's going to extend the Trump tax cuts, which is not really a cut in your taxes, it's keeping them where they are? Is she going to go further than Trump did and cut in for people under $400,000? She sort of alludes to that, but doesn't say. Is she going to do what Joe Biden said, which is he's not going to raise the tax. He's going to keep the Trump tax cuts for those people. She doesn't want to say, I'm going to keep the tax cuts because then it's not the Harris tax cut. So that's why she's having a tough time in talking about taxes and talking about the impact on middle-class people.
So I understand there are policy differences here. But then on the other side of the coin, do we have any coherent economic plan from the Trump administration?
No, I think both plans from both Trump and Harris are economically incoherent. Trump just makes stuff up, pulls stuff out, and it's like the Oprah show. I'll see you and raise with another tax cut for another discrete group of taxpayers based on who I'm speaking in front of.
Do you think, though, that since Harris is attempting to articulate an economic plan, that people will look at that as, well, at least she's trying, whereas Trump, as you said, comes off many times as just pulling it out of his butt?
Well, here's the thing, because I watched the Stephanie Rule interview later on, which is on MSNBC. She could not have had a more friendly interviewer asking more friendly questions. There, she did go back to the pay your fair share, tax on millionaires,
Right.
tax on corporations. We're going to, go back and get the bad guys. And she basically lost sort of the traction and goodwill she had built up in the Pittsburgh speech when she put some specifics on it. And those, of course, are also included in the 80-page term paper. Nothing good would come out of that. You could put Ronald Reagan's economic plan in 80 words. Cut taxes, cut regulation, let America grow, invest in defense and infrastructure. I think that may have been, just over 8 words. But she's got 80 pages, and buried within it are a lot of little time bombs. She's not specific about the taxes. And here's what was the tell about why her plan yesterday did not work. It's because there wasn't anything in the New York Times about it. I mean, there's a story up now of analysis, but not in the morning. There was a brief comment yesterday, but not today in the morning. They're buried way down in the scroll was the 5 takeaways from the MSNBC interview, which were Harris has a roundabout answers to open-ended questions. She avoided what if the Republicans take the Senate, which is very likely, and a hard-hitting interview is yet to happen. Those were the New York Times 3 takeaways from the MSNBC interview.
Gotcha.
So that tells me that she basically fell flat on her face in trying to roll out an economic policy. She had the right words in the speech. She had the good start, but she didn't have the policy follow through to make it, I think, meaningful to voters who are concerned about this issue.
Right. Unfortunately, I probably fall into this category too. When the discussion goes to economics, my eyes kind of glaze over. No matter how good the policy is or how bad the policy is. And I'm wondering how many Americans feel the same way, because it's hard to understand a lot of it.
It is hard to understand, but what people understand is, are you going to raise my taxes or not?
Right.
Am I going to have a better job or not? Are you going to find my company so I get laid off because you're going after big corporations that you don't understand actually are the employers of millions of Americans?
Right.
And so those all become very real issues to people. But on the issue of taxes, everybody knows how much they saved when they cut taxes.
Right.
And the question is, are you going to take that away from me? And she needs a better, effective answer to that. Nobody knew at the Battle of Gettysburg that was the turning point of the Civil War.
Right.
Now, we don't know yet. We won't know till November. This could be the turning point of the campaign. She had the opportunity to pivot and sort of make those concerns go away. I don't believe she was successful in doing that. And if not, given where the polls are and sort of the retrenchment that's happened, I mean, this could be the week we look back and said that was the lost opportunity.
Right, exactly. But she is trying to heal up the Biden problems, and she's going to go to the border this week. We'll find out what's going to happen there, because that is going to be another problem if she goes the wrong way with it, right?
Well, it is. A lot of what Democratic commentators have said she should not go to the border. She should have gone 4 years ago or 3 years ago. And I'm not sure anything good is going to come out of this visit to the border.
Right.
Because she's trying to have it both ways. And as a great Democrat, Jim Howard said in Texas, the only thing in the middle of the road is yellow lines and dead armadillos. And she's standing there in the middle.
There you go. Okay, the other news this week is the foreign interference, I guess is what we can call it, right?
We've got other people who are trying to influence our national elections, most notably the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese. The Russians have bankrolled several, they call themselves conservative, but they're really Putin pimp commentators who are taking over sort of the alternative media, some of whom are making $1 million a year for promulgating Russian propaganda under the guise of conservative views. There's nothing conservative about it. It's surrender pro-Putin propaganda. But they were outed. They were getting subsidies through Russian television, RT. One story that appeared using AI was that Harris was involved in a hit-and-run accident and injured a woman in Oakland or in California someplace. And they had created visuals to make that fake story something that ran on alternative media.
Wow.
So you saw stuff like that happening. We don't really know the extent to which it's happening, but we know it's a problem. We know that there are some people who are bought and sold by the Kremlin who are advancing mostly an anti-Ukraine policy on behalf of Donald Trump. Separately, the Iranians stole Trump campaign files and have attempted to peddle them to various media sources. You know, I'm reminded of the story. Somebody stole Jimmy Carter's debate book and gave it to Jim Baker, and they, of course, gave it back to him through the FBI. So that's been happening for a long time, but now we have a state sponsor of Iran who's trying to create mischief, and they're doing it to defeat Trump because they're on a different side. And then separately, we have the Chinese who are passing misinformation in a variety of ways, who are not necessarily candidate specific, but certainly issue specific, and how they attempt to meddle in the elections. And Mike, where it's become, I think, very scary and difficult now for the free world is if you saw Don Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. collectively pen an op-ed in opposition really to Ukraine. Republicans have decided to be more overt, both Trump and Vance, in saying that they should settle the war and give up the Ukrainian territory. To her credit, she was just on TV with Zelensky, strong and forthright in support of the freedom fighters and for the national sovereignty of Ukraine and for maintaining the free world in Europe, one of her finer moments.
Right.
So this election is about some very serious things that are life and death issues to a lot of people outside of America. And this may go down as a pivotal week one way or the other on all of those issues.
And of course, to the average guy at home, I'm not sure the Ukraine situation means a thing when they can't pay their bills and they're having economic issues. She's got to square that away, I would think, before anybody will listen to her about other stuff.
Well, Russian propaganda has led Americans to believe that we're, not funding colleges and not funding schools and not funding school lunches and sending the money to Ukraine. In fact, what we're doing is we're spending money in American factories that are producing bullets and missiles that are built by American workers who bring home a paycheck to American cities and towns. And Ukraine is fighting without American personnel to defend their borders so that we don't have a wider war in Europe, which was a lesson of 1939 and every other time isolationists believed that they could keep America out of the international situation. So that's simply, again, how Russia has tried to portray this issue, and certain politicians have tried to portray it, but it's not an honest portrayal of the situation in the world today.
Well, is that about it for the week?
God, I hope so. It's been more eventful than people might have thought.
As you've pointed out, there are a couple very important issues that it's going to come down to. The candidates are going to have to put a finer point on all of their discussion of these topics, I would think.
Absolutely. Harris still has the challenge of being able to appear before a hostile or at least a neutral media source and answer tough questions and give direct answers that people can understand and relate to, and of taking her economic policies, all 80 pages of it now, and relate it to people with the specifics of what they're facing with the current tax cuts rolling off in 2025. Exactly how are you going to handle that? What are you going to do? Now, she has the ability to do that. As we've talked about in the past, she's pivoted on some serious issues already. She needs to do more pivoting on economics to get that voter that's left in the middle who doesn't like Trump, don't want to vote for Trump, but they're concerned about what Harris's economics will mean for their household and their family. That's the challenge she faces. Trump faces the challenge of keeping his mouth shut, keeping focused on the issues. His ads are very good. We don't see a lot of them in California. They are somewhat effective. And so she's got to be able to counter that. And he's got to keep his mouth shut, keep the focus on the economics. But on any given day, he's likely to say something foolish, and that will dominate the news for him for that week. And to the extent that she's able to keep focused on his mistakes, his misstatements, his foolish things that he says, the better she's going to be.
I may be way off base here, but I think if she put on her serious prosecutor face and went on Fox News and did an interview on Fox News and came out of that fairly good, she would wrap up the election.
Yeah, that's the potential. I mean, it's just like when Reagan said, there you go again, or you're better off in 4 years from now. Step into the devil's den, show you've got what it takes to stand toe-to-toe with Putin, and make your case. I mean, There's good things that she can use to hit Trump, and she does do that pretty effectively. But she's got to make the case for her own policies. She's got to get out of the shadow of Joe Biden.
Right.
And she's got to show that indeed she is what she says she is, a capitalist, a pragmatist, somebody whose solutions are not going to be tethered to ideology. I mean, all of that, like I say, any Republican president could have given that speech. And I thought it was the best part of the speech. I thought she understood what she needed to do. Right. She just didn't execute on the actual details. She needs to have the confidence to do that, and her people need to get her prepared to do that. Now, she's worried about making a mistake. I mean, everybody's learned the lesson of Joe Biden, I suppose. But, Trump makes a mistake every third word. And I think Fox News would be a great place for her to prove that. And that could be a very pivotal moment in the campaign.
Absolutely. Well, next week we got the VP debate. We got that to look forward to. And 6 weeks.
Countdown's on.
Countdown is on. We want to thank you for joining us on Red versus Blue through all of these 40 episodes. We've had a great time doing this. We're going to continue up till election and then see what happens. Subscribe to the podcast, like us on Facebook, and we'll see you again next week for another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.